What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and we're going to be hitting part 2 of our team previews today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Florida Mayhem, the Guangzhou Charge, the Hangzhou Spark, and the Houston Outlaws. Before we get into that, though, I'd like to thank all you guys for joining me. Everybody out there in YouTube land, thanks for all of your support, all the likes, subscribes. It's been greatly appreciated. And if you're new, thanks for joining. And don't forget to hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell, so you know when I have Overwatch League content coming out, which is going to be a couple times a week from here on into the season, and then we'll amp it up a little bit more when we get into matches and all that stuff. We'll be doing a lot more content when we get things truly rolling and that kind of stuff. Thank you very much. So let's pick up where we left off on the last episode. All right, we are going to talk about my team, the Florida Mayhem. So, the Mayhem, decent finish last year, little disappointing in the tournament. Of course, we had the whole, they got beat by Washington with the Decay signing and all that. I did say Decay on the last episode. I apologize for that. I was thinking about Washington and I was looking at them. Anyway, I don't know why I said Decay in there. Let's get into the Florida Mayhem. We have on the release list for the Mayhem, like I said, they had a decent finish last year, way better than I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to be mid-pack. They started off slow, looked really good, but they ran into some troubles where, hero pool stuff, where your best player on Tracer, unfortunately on Tracer and Genji, was Yaki. And, they had nobody to bounce it off of, and BQB was doing great on the hit scan stuff, but he just didn't have a good tracer. They didn't have anybody backing them up. So it turned out to, problematic when they couldn't do what they wanted to do, where they were running Tracer Ash or they were running some of the other things that they were doing really well. Now, this roster, I think, was underrated last year by a lot of people at some positions. But this year, let's talk 2021. So, released from the team, they have released Fate, Byram, Karayan, Chris, and Saya player who retired to go play Valorant. They lost those guys, and then they picked up Oj, Slime, and Checkmate. Now, I like this a lot. I am a fan of Oj and also Slime, and I do believe I did say one of the guys that they should pick up would be Slime, and this was at... Oh, and I forgot, they released Chris as well. I forgot to mention that. Slime was one of the guys I really wanted them to pick up before the free agency started last year, after they announced who they released and, before we got into roster reveals and all the madness with that. I really wanted them to pick up Slime. I'm really happy about that. I think it's going to be a fantastic upgrade. Now, a lot of people are saying, and I love Oj. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Oj. I think he really didn't have teams around him that could perform well or coaching, or there was always something missing where he was. I think Florida's a good fit, contrary to what some people think, because I think Kookie's a great coach. I think the atmosphere's a lot different than some of those places. I don't think it's very toxic. I think everybody gets to work, goes, plays together. I think he was in a situation when he was in Dallas where it was a shit show, and I think kind of the same thing happened in Los Angeles last year. I just don't think he fit in. I think he's decent. I think he's a above average Overwatch League level tank. But I'm going to say this. I think Fate brought some other stuff to the table that I don't know if Oj brings. So I think it's kind of a wash with a little bit on the maybe a tick downgrade right now. I'm going to go right now because we don't know what Oj is going to bring. I think he's going to bring his A game, and I think he's going to be really good for this team. I'm looking forward to seeing him play with the Mayhem. But I'm going to say they seemingly upgraded their roster in positions that they needed, but there's two of the guys are unproven factors right now. Like I said with Oj, and Checkmate, don't know too much of what he's going to do. I don't think he's going to be playing a ton. I think they're going to run that BQB Yaki most of the time, and then fill Checkmate in where needed during certain metas. If there's a double hit scan or wherever you're going to put him in there to play either alongside Yaki or BQB to fill in whatever specific role. Whether we have situations where we had like last year, things like that. I think he's a decent upgrade, but it's still an unknown. My thoughts on what this team is going to do, I think we're kind of going to be in the same spot where we were last year with them. There are certain metas and stuff that they're going to be just fantastic at, and they're going to be challenging to win tournaments and things like that. I'm not looking at them as I look at Dallas, where Dallas is must be in the top 3 for me to give them any kind of positive vibes later on, because that roster is insane and that team is insane. This team is really, really good. I think they're top 5. I'm going to say somewhere in that top 5 range, you're going to see the Mayhem most every tournament meta situation. I think that they're doing a lot of good stuff. I think the main thing that we need to worry about as far as when we're discussing the Mayhem is the Oj factor, whether or not, how he's playing, what he's doing, how good is he going to be. If he's playing at top-notch Oj performance, you might see them kick up into the top 2-3 in the league and challenge all the time. If not, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble and might fall down to the mid-pack because they don't have anyone to back him up with. They only have one backup on this team, and that's Checkmate. So, we're going to see how that plays out. I'm not a fan of that. I would like to see a couple more guys added, maybe, before the season starts, just to get a couple bench guys in, see how some guys look, maybe in contenders or guys that were released late that are kind of floating around there that they could throw on the team. But I think they're solid across the board, though. Gangnam Jin and Slime should be great. DPS line we talked about should be great. On the positive end of Oj, and I think with Gargoyle, who's fantastic, he proved a lot last year to people that just said he just one-tricked some weird Roadhog meta shit at the end of 2019, and that's how he was good and decent and whatever. But yeah, I'm looking at them, like I said, top 5, one of the better teams in the league. They're going to be a pain in the ass to play, I think, for a lot of teams, and I do think, though, they will slip up occasionally where you're like, what's wrong with this team? There's going to be questions. I think that's going to happen occasionally. I just want to see some matches and see how they get going and how they start off. I'm thinking it might be a little slow, but I think as the season goes on, they'll be a lot better. And once they get some synergy in that and whatnot and what have you, all of the buzzwords to how a team should play. But that's Florida. Let's move on to the next team. We are going to be talking about the Guangzhou Charge. Okay, the Charge last year were kind of hot and then hit a bad meta at the end of the year. Let's just be honest. I was really high on them last year. I thought they were going to do really well, and they did most of the year. Most of the year, they were great. They ran into some situations where they lost to Seoul. Seoul had their number at times in big games. So decided to revamp their roster. They've gone away from the total international vibe that they had, and they're just going strictly Korean and Chinese, which I think is okay. If you feel you need to go that way, then go that way. That's okay. I think getting the best player at any position wherever they're from and trying to figure out communication is eventually going to be how this league goes. But right now, do what you want to do that you think is best for the team. Here's what we got with them. They released Happy, Nero, Shu, Wea, Neptuno, and Chara. They picked up Kariv, Mandu, Makaylee, Choi Shiwan, and Jaehoon. I think that's how you pronounce all their names. Forgive me if I pronounce them wrong, because that's what I'm going with. Okay, so I gave them, right now, grade-wise, I gave them a C+. The main factor is I do not think that Kariv is going to be able to fill the shoes of Shu, say that a couple times, in the capacity that the Guangzhou Charge need him to play. I think Kariv is good. I think he's a decent flex support, but I think Shu was just infinitely better at a couple more things. We look at Kariv. He was great on Ana, the sleep darts and all that stuff. He's just really, really good at. He's a solid Ana player. Where Shu shines better to me, God, I'm not doing, we're not doing puns here. Where Shu shined better was when he played, his Zenyatta was just better. I like that, Kariv and the Moira issue play, they're kind of on the same level. But I just like the way that Shu played Zenyatta better. I think his Ana is about equal, maybe a tick less than Kariv. So you have that going for you if there's a lot of Ana play going on. I did not like that potentially they could be in another spot. Chara was okay, a decent to, he was a serviceable main support. I liked him a lot. In situations, but in certain situations, he wasn't that great either. They replaced him with Mandu, who didn't really get a shot in New York. They're giving him a shot here. Let's see how he does here. The tanks are where I get a little weird, main tank-wise. Jaehoon and Rio, I don't know too much about Jaehoon. And Rio I've always been let down by Rio in a way. I just don't think he just doesn't have what I want him to have as far as the main tank. You guys know I'm always picky with the main tanks, and I pick on them a lot. It's the equivalent of picking on the offensive line for a team to me, like in football. It's always without these guys, you're going to sink. But we'll see. We'll see. Krong, though, that's the one thing that they have going for them. Krong is top 5 off tank in the league. He could have been Rookie of the Year last year. Really, really good. So they have that going for them. I think that's going to be really good. And there's a lot of potential with what I've kind of briefly seen and read about the DPS guys they brought in McKaylee and Choi Siwon, and to pair up with Eileen. I think that's going to be a place where they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be just fine there. I don't see any problems in the DPS line. Eileen proved himself last year. I thought he was fantastic. Him and Happy were a great duo. In fact, I thought he outshined Happy, which is probably why they got rid of him. And going into the year, everyone was like, Happy's the star on this team, and Eileen ended up being the guy that was shown, however you want to pronounce that. I think that in APAC, now we have 7 teams. I think they're going to be one of a couple of teams that are going to be like floating around the middle of that. They're not the worst. They're not the best. So that middle of the mucky mess that's going to be the APAC region, I put them in with the Phillies and the Chengdus and potentially Hangzhou and stuff like that. Anywhere from 2 to 5 is a landing spot. I only give them a C+ because I didn't like the downgrade at flex support. It's not the worst thing that they could have gotten was Kariv, but I would have fought to keep Shu. Would have been my preferable choice with this team to put them, solidly lock them in at maybe 2, maybe 3. I think that would be the most optimal for this team in that APAC region. But that's going to do it for the Guangzhou Charge. Let's move on to the Hangzhou Spark. So now we have the Hangzhou Spark. Let's talk about them. All right, last year, very disappointing. Except for with me. I kind of saw this coming. They overperformed in 2019, and I did not think they had the roster to do something other than GOATs. I think they were short in a couple of different positions, and it played out that way. So they released QOQ, who they signed in the middle of the season, who we all thought was going to be good. They brought him in when they brought in Architect. Thought he was going to be really good, but it didn't work out. Sawson, they got rid of Otto, Adora, Bebe, Rhea, and Bazzi. Now, what they added some good stuff here. Now, Bernard, I think, is one of the big guys that they brought in because they had off-tank troubles. Gushwei is going to be fine. They also brought in Xiaomin Su, who's whatever on this team. An additional hit scan is never, you can't turn it down. He's Overwatch League level. I don't know where he's at. He got released at the beginning of the year last year. Nobody picked him up. And, now he's back in the league. We'll see what he does. And then we have Mika and Liege. Now, these last couple of guys, I think, are the key players that we're going to be talking about as far as where this team goes. I don't know a ton about them. I know that Liege is an insanely good tank, and I think him and Bernard can trade off hero pool stuff, and I think that's going to work out good for them. Because you got Gushwei, who's solid, and you bring in Liege and MC, or not Liege, I'm sorry. You bring in Mika and MCD for a little bit of support help. I think Coldest is probably the best support they got. IDK, I think they're going to potentially switch in and out with Mika. I think that's something that we're going to be looking at down the road here. IDK had some issues last year, so we'll see what happens. I think they wanted a little bit of backup on that. And Bebe was not good last year for them, in my opinion. So they definitely upgraded by keeping Coldest, getting rid of Bebe, and bringing in the likes of MCD and just getting some depth there. Because to me, you can't have enough good flex support play, because there could be situations where you have to run Ana Zen. And you don't want your main support who maybe played a little bit of Ana. I mean, they all play different things in ranked and whatnot. But as far as professional level play, I would rather have a couple of backups there than maybe in other positions. Instead of going hog wild on backup DPS players, I would grab another flex support, me personally. And I like what they did here. I do like that. But I'm going to stress this with a but. The Asian region, I'm not sold on this Asia versus North America thing, so you're not going to get that from me. I think good teams are good teams whether they play in Asia or they don't. I don't think all the good teams are in Asia. I don't think all the bad teams are in North America. So, we've had this discussion multiple times. And, of course, we'll get into it mid-season when everyone's screaming about X is terrible and Y is the better region. I'll throw my 2 cents in there. But, before we get in, everyone to me is on equal playing ground as far as regionality. But I will say the thing about this region is the there's less teams and they're closer together as far as the talent that they have. So there could be a lot more, visually speaking, the eye test is going to be that they have better teams because they're all on the same level. It doesn't necessarily mean they're better than NA. It's just volume of teams and the skill level that these teams are at. And I think Hangzhou falls into the middle, but I think they're more could be 4 to 6 range instead of like the 3 to 5 range. They're going to hit a sweet spot in there somewhere. They could potentially go higher too, but I gave them a grade of a C+. I forgot to say that in the beginning. I didn't necessarily think it was the best roster flip, in positions, but I think some of the guys they picked up are really good, and I think they're going to help out a lot, and I think it's the potential factor with this team more than anything. I'm not as high on them as a lot of people are. Seems like as per usual, except for some reason I have a soft spot for Guangzhou. I'm a little bit lower on them this year than I was last year. I'm feeling about the same as Hangzhou, except for I'm not looking them to fall flat on their face like I did last year because I kind of saw that coming. I'm looking more of them to be middle of the pack, beat teams that they're not supposed to on certain occasions, and lose the teams that they shouldn't on other occasions. I think they're going to, tournament-wise, I don't think they're going to shock anybody and go into finals. Maybe if a meta hits right with some of the DPS guys they got, and, you get some good synergy going. I think that has potential, but I am not looking for anything like that from this team. I think they're just middle of the pack. I think if they were in NA, they'd be in the same spot. Area-wise, not number-wise. So that's my feelings on the Spark. Let's talk about the next team on the list. Let's talk about the Houston Outlaws. My favorite team to bash in years 1, 2, and most of season 3. So, yeah, me and the Outlaws go back a long way. I had a lot of problems with the Outlaws, how they were run, things that they did. Just certain things were just baffling to me. Last year was another baffling year. I had a lot of hopes for Harsh as a coach. I thought he was going to do a good job, but there was just a lot of over analytical shit that I thought that they were doing and trying to do based on numbers and stuff like that instead of based on feel and how things should work out and could work out. That's my feeling on them last year. So, but let's get into who they released. Now, I gave them a tweener grade here. I gave them a C+B. And hear me out in here. You'll see why. Now, this is me being not my normal self as to what I say about the Outlaws. I'm kind of flipping the script a little bit on the Outlaws. I kind of like what they did. But I am going to I'll get into it a little bit more in a second as to my thoughts. So, they released all of the stuff that's been hanging around for way too long. They got rid of Boink, Repel, who they got signed last year, who was okay. They got rid of Meko, didn't work out. Muma, Jexay, that's the baffler. Blase, and Linkser. Now, this is who they picked up. They picked up Piggy, Happy, Django, KSF, Jake makes a comeback, and then Crimzo. Now, all things considered with the Outlaws, I think they're going in the right direction. They needed to flush that roster. They needed to just start over. I would have kept Jexay. That would have been me, personally. That guy would have stayed. I like the way he plays. I like his leadership. I just like his style. The way he's not a tilter. He's a worker. He's going to go out and do his thing and do it really well. I would have liked to have seen him stay there. Now, the one puzzling thing is now we have Joby, who's underage. He'll be activated for the season. He will turn 18 probably somewhere around the first week. So I don't know what they're going to do to start, but they're going with a couple of unknown factors. Actually, a few, which is kind of good for them. They went out and they actually looked, scouted, got some players instead of just grabbing hot free agents and stuff like that don't work out. They decided not to go Dallas again this year, which is fantastic. I think Flame last year finally got a check and some money and grabbed all the guys he could grab, and some of it worked out and some of it just fell flat. Unfortunately, I do like where they've gone. The support line is kind of weird right now. I think Crimso's good. Crimso's going to be an upgrade on the flex. I think Crimso, unfortunately, was in Dallas. Now, the thing is with the Outlaws, I'm going to get back on track here as I was trying to figure out Joby's date there. Because I knew it was like either end of March, early April, somewhere in the beginning of the season. We wanted to get him in. I forgot to mention he was signed as well, but he's an inactive underage guy and will be active potentially at the beginning of the season. So there's that. Now they're going with a mixed roster again, which I'm okay with. They got the guys that they thought could fit, and they got them. So the thing with the Outlaws, they upgraded in every position from slightly to way better. You know, you got a couple of guys that you got rid of. You got rid of Linkser, you brought in Happy. Upgrade. A ton? Not really. Slight upgrade. You know, you bring in Piggy and Django. They're going to be better than whatever they did in the tank line last year. Let's just be honest. Hydration experiment. Mumo was terrible. And Meko was not Meko. Meko was not the New York Meko that we knew. I just don't think he fit in the playstyle and all that. So a slight upgrade there. More so on the main tank than the off tank. So to me, slight upgrade. I think you get into more with Crimso, the better of any of the flex supports that they had last year. I also think that the rest of the DPS guys that they signed and brought in are going to be better in Blase, and that includes moving Hydration back to DPS. I think that's going to work out really well for them as well. I think this team is going to look a lot better. Then they also brought in Junkbuck to help out and co-head coach, which I'm not a fan with these kind of situations, because it's a situation like in the NFL, they say if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. The same thing with coaches to me. If you have two head coaches, you have none, because you have conflicting styles usually. Yeah, they work together in San Francisco for a bit. They might share a lot of similarities, but there's going to be a power play there somewhere along the line, and it's not going to work out well for Houston in that regard. But I think that this team has taken the steps that they needed to have taken last year. There could have been some contract restraints, and I know there's money restraints and all that going into the season in 2020. So, you know, we're taking steps in the right direction for Houston. I think it's going to translate into a massive jump up in the standings? No, but I think it's going to solidify them as a mid-pack kind of gatekeeper team. So I guess maybe, yeah, it does. I think they're going to be on a higher level than they've been maybe since the beginning of season 1. I like the looks of this team. I think there's potential for it to get better and play, you know, and perform really well, especially if Piggy and Django can do what they do. It's going to be crucial. And Dante, you have Dante, who to me is one of the most underrated players in the league last year. He carried them to a lot of the wins that they got, which weren't many. But the reason why they looked decent most of the time was Dante. He had to put up with, you know, running DPS guys on tank, other tank guys not performing, you know, mediocre to subpar flex support play, just all kinds of shit. And he managed to make it through there. And I also think that KSF's going to help out in certain situations with certain heroes. He's going to be crucial. That way you can run him and Dante in certain things. You can run Jake on certain things. You can just do so much. Hydration has you get into a Doomfist meta, you got Hydration. Farah, you can put hydration on there. You have Junkrat, you got Jake. And Jake is going to bring something to this team also. I don't know why this team needs so much leadership around the team. I think they have a lot of chill guys, but I think Jake is going to provide on-the-field leadership along with the 2 head coaches, so that's probably not going to work out. But what I'm saying is they have a lot of good, strong voices on this team that should be able to lead them in the right direction, and I think they're going to be better than they were in the last couple years. I wouldn't expect, magic to happen. I think they could potentially, at some point, as the season goes on, potentially, you get into maybe that June, July tournament, you might see them do something, get into the semis, maybe get into the finals in the right meta or something like that. This team's got potential. I like where they're going. I think this is a fantastic start. I think this is a great upgrade / new roster to me. I just like the way it looks, and I am expecting some decent things from them. I'm not expecting to have my head in my hands the whole match watching it going, what in the fuck are they doing? I don't think I'm going to be doing that. And then having to slam them on Monday for running some sort of wacko comp and putting hydration on Winston or whatever happens with them, or running Farah into bullshit like they did last year. I don't think we're going to see too much of that. I think they have too many smart guys around now. You have a lot of good, strong voices, guys who know the game on the field and, in the coaching area. And so I'm looking for some good stuff out of Houston. All right, guys. So that is going to do it for episode 2 of this. Next up, we have our next 4 teams, which are going to be the London Spitfire, the Los Angeles Gladiators. Let's try that again. The London Spitfire, the Los Angeles Gladiators, the Los Angeles Valiant, and the New York Excelsior. 4 teams that are just kind of weird. Well, 3 teams that are just don't know too much what's going to happen. 1 team, we know what they did, and we don't like them anymore. As far as what they did to their players and all that, I'm not a fan. Check 2 episodes back, or 3, I should say, on my rant on the Valiant. But we'll talk about those teams next up on OverTakes. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for joining me. Everybody on YouTube, thanks for all of your support. It's been greatly appreciated. All the likes and subscribes. Thank you very much. All right, guys, this is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody out there, stay safe. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.